You are digging your own grave, Reeves. A man doesn't live in the ground like a prairie dog.
The town of Blacktree had never seen a man so determined to bury himself before winter.
Let them laugh. The soil will hold what their walls can't.
Daniel, this isn't a home, it's a burrow. The whole town thinks you've lost your mind.
Timber costs money I don't have. Sarah, the earth gives its walls for free.
3 feet of sod on a green wood frame? The first heavy snow will crush that coffin?
Daniel ignored the crowd and drove his spade deeper, the cold soil resisting like frozen resolve.
I am not here to stop you, but if you are wrong,
She's not here to stop me. That's more than I had.
By nightfall, the only thing the town agreed on was that Daniel Reeves was building a grave to live in.
I arrived too late to cut and season timber, and I spent my last coin on seed. This slope is the only shelter I can afford.
but sod, Daniel. It's heavy, wet, and alive. A wall of dirt won't keep the cold out.
The soil traps the earth's own heat, Sarah, 3 feet thick, and the frost never reaches inside.
She studied the dark, fibrous loam in his hand, and something quiet shifted behind her doubt.
Then we'd best start before the ground freezes solid. Hand me a block.
By noon, the walls were rising, thick, living cuts of prairie stacked like a fortress, stacked against the coming cold.
I give it a month before that dirt heap sweats through and collapses on him. The man's a fool.
Robert's words traveled faster than the frost, and by the end of the week, the whole of Blacktree was speculating on when, not if, the dugout would cave in.
They can spread all the rumors they want. The earth doesn't lie.
But the whispers had teeth, and the first real snow was only a week away. The cabin was finished as the first flakes fell, a low mound with a warm window and a chimney breathing smoke.
Daniel, it's warm in here. Warmer than my house.
The earth holds the sun's heat, Sarah. 3 feet of soil keeps the frost out.
My house was freezing this morning. I could see my breath inside.
She pressed her palm against the sod, and the soil answered with a steady, deep warmth. At her own cabin, frost crusted the windows, and the floorboards ached with cold.
The earth is the real keeper of heat. This hill is sheltering us.
Robert Calvert called it a fluke. The first wet snow will soak through and that roof will collapse, he warned.
Let him talk. The walls are standing, and so am I.
By nightfall, the town had a new worry. Not whether the dugout would collapse, but when, at dawn, a hand-painted sign appeared on the old pine by the church, "Sod, grave, will collapse." The words were written in carpenter's black paint. By midday, every homesteader had read them.
That note is poison, Robert, and I know it came from your hand. What do you have against my brother?
Your brother is burying himself alive. I am just warning the town before they have to dig him out.
His walls held warm while my floors froze solid. You are not warning anyone. You are afraid.
Daniel said nothing about the note. He only cut heavier timbers and wedged them hard against the sod ceiling.
They want to see me fail. But the earth doesn't care about their gossip.
That evening, the first real snowfall drifted down like a warning. The mound vanished under fresh white. Inside, the temperature held steady at 40 degrees. Outside, the town leaned into the wind and waited, but the deepest cold was still gathering in the north, and it would not wait for anyone. 2 feet of snow fell overnight. Daniel climbed onto the mound and felt the weight of it pressing the sod down like a blanket.
It's not a threat. The snow is sealing the seams.
Across town, Robert Calvert fought the same snow with a straight-back shovel and a growing ache in his shoulders.
This blasted roof. Snow just slides down and piles against the walls.
He'll freeze up there before he admits he's wrong.
Daniel lit a lamp inside his buried cabin, and the walls gave back the cold day's borrowed heat.
Robert won't last the winter if he keeps climbing that ice-slick roof.
I won't give him the satisfaction of being right. This roof will hold.
The snow that threatened other houses was becoming Daniel's second layer of insulation, but the weather glass was falling, and the mountains were pulling a deeper cold down from the north. At dusk, Daniel searched behind Robert's workshop for discarded lumber. To brace his ceiling, what he found was a book, spine broken, pages torn.
That's no lumber list. That's a diagram of an earth-sheltered house.
The faded ink sketched a dugout buried in a hillside, with notes in the margin. Sod barrier 3 feet thick. Frost never penetrates.
This is Robert's own hand. He knew this method 3 decades ago, and he cast it aside.
He pocketed the page and stepped back into the storm. Snow was falling hard enough to erase his footprints. Robert Calvert paced his parlor, the fire sputtering low, unable to shake the creaking in his rafters.
This storm will test every roof in Blacktree, mine included.
But inside the sod cabin, the walls radiated a steady warmth, and the oil lamp burned without a flicker.
The blizzard is sealing us in, but the walls are holding.
By midnight, the wind screamed like a broken saw, and the blizzard had fully arrived. The blizzard struck without mercy. Trees bent like grass, and the wind drove snow sideways with the force of buckshot.
Daniel, I think I heard something. A shout, maybe, from the direction of Robert's place.
Stay down. Keep under the table. The whole roof is coming apart.
In Robert's cabin, the center beam groaned and splintered, a jagged crack running from end to end.
I heard it too. Sarah, I have to go. His wife and child are in that house.
You'll never make it. The drifts are over your head, and the wind will freeze you solid.
I can't stand here and let them die. I'd never live with myself. Hand me that rope.
She pressed her lips together and handed him the coiled rope, her hands trembling.
Daniel, if you don't come back.
I will come back. Light the lantern in the window. I'll follow it home.
Daniel opened the door, and the blizzard swallowed him whole. He tied one end of the rope to the door frame and stepped into the white void. The snow was waist deep, and the wind drove it into his eyes like needles. Each step forward was a battle against the frozen world.
30 paces to the old pine, then turn toward the creek. Keep counting or freeze where you stand.
Inside the sod cabin, Sarah knelt by the lamp, her lips moving in a silent prayer. She did not want Daniel to hear. The rope grew stiff with ice, a frozen lifeline snaking back through the storm toward the faint yellow glow of the window. Daniel stumbled against the wreckage of Robert's house, the roof gone, snow pouring into the shattered room like sand into a grave.
Robert, call out if you are still alive.
Here, under the beam. I can't feel my leg.
The rope still held, a thin frozen line trailing back through the white chaos to the distant lamp glow. Daniel dropped to his knees and dug through the snow. Robert was pinned beneath a splintered timber, his face white with shock and cold. Daniel wedged the shattered beam aside with his shoulder and pulled Robert upright. The carpenter's leg buckled, but the fear in his eyes was stronger than the pain.
You came back for me? After everything I said.
No one deserves to freeze to death. Now grab the rope and don't let go.
The journey back was a blur of white and burning cold. Daniel took Robert's arm across his shoulders, and they trudged step by agonizing step along the frozen lifeline.
The rope is still tight. The lamp is still burning. Just keep moving.
Ahead, the golden square of the window grew larger, and a shadow moved behind the frost-rimmed glass. Sarah was waiting.
Oh, thank God. Hurry, both of you, inside.
They stumbled across the threshold and collapsed onto the earthen floor, gasping as the warmth of the buried cabin met the ice in their coats.
Warm. How can it be so warm in a hole in the ground?
Outside, the blizzard howled on, but inside the earthen sanctuary, 3 souls drew breath against the frozen world. Sarah wrapped Robert in a wool blanket and pressed a hot cup of broth into his shaking hands. The frostbite on his fingers was already turning a dangerous white.
How? How is this place so warm? My whole house was a frozen coffin by midnight.
Daniel reached inside his coat and drew out the torn page, the ink still legible despite the ice and damp.
You already know how, Robert. You drew the diagram yourself 30 years ago.
My own hand. The soil barrier, 3 feet thick. I'd forgotten, or I chose to forget. I mocked you. I called your home a grave, and all the while the answer was in my own discarded book.
Daniel said nothing. He simply placed a hand on Robert's shoulder and let the silence speak.
He risked his life for the man who tried to bury him. The earth taught us more than warmth tonight.
I don't deserve this. Not the rescue, not the warmth, not your forgiveness.
Outside, the blizzard screamed, but inside the earthen walls, the cold between them had finally thawed. The blizzard broke before dawn, leaving a world buried under 8 feet of merciless white. The only sound was the slow drip of ice melting from the chimney of Daniel's earthen home. The townspeople emerged and saw what the storm had done. Robert's framed house lay in splinters, but the dugout stood warm and whole. Robert limped through the doorway, still wrapped in the blanket, the torn page clutched in his frostbitten hand.
Listen to me. This home didn't fail because it wasn't my idea. It was, I threw this page away, and Daniel built what I was too proud to remember.
The confession fell on the frozen air like a stone. For a long moment, the crowd only stared at the carpenter who had mocked the man now standing beside him.
They're not laughing now.
The earth doesn't care about pride. It only asks for respect. That's all I gave it.
One by one, the townspeople approached, not to mock, but to touch the warm sod and feel the steady truth that the storm had laid bare.
The truth was in my own hand, and I buried it, he dug it back up.
By noon, the wind had shifted. Daniel Reeves was no longer the fool who built a grave. He was the man who had read the earth when no one else would listen. When the snow finally melted, the true lesson revealed itself. Daniel's dugout was not a scar on the land, but a living hill.
Look at it, Daniel. It's as if the earth gave us back a home.
It always meant to, if we'd only listen. Now every root will anchor it tighter.
Not far away, Robert Calvert watched, a new blueprint in his hand and a different sort of foundation already laid in his mind. Daniel often sat on his roof, feeling the sun warm the grass that now protected his home in every season. And Robert Calvert broke ground on his own earthen house, the torn page carefully folded in his pocket.
The whole valley will be dotted with hills before long.
Good. The earth has enough to teach us all.
By the next autumn, 3 more families had dug into the hillside. They called it Reeves' method. Though Daniel only ever called it common sense, they had laughed when he buried his cabin under a hill of sod. But the earth had the last word, and it spoke in the language of living things. But the page Daniel had saved held a second secret, one he'd missed in the storm's darkness. A footnote in faded ink, warning of spring rains and sod-heavy water. In the margin, barely legible, earth-sheltered structures require drainage. Pooled melt will loosen bond, risk collapse.
Pooled melt will loosen bond. The winter was my ally, but the spring could undo it all.
Within a week, warm rain fell in sheets, and the snowpack melted faster than the ground could drink. Streams burst their banks. The new earthen homes, built in imitation, began to weep inside. Moisture seeped through unprepared walls, and the town's hope curdled into panic.
Daniel, the McIntyre family's roof is sagging. The news has spread. Your method is failing.
It's not the method, Sarah. It's the drainage. Robert's page warned, but I missed it.
Then we must dig trenches around every house tonight, or we'll lose everything.
The town mobilized through the storm, cutting channels to lead the water away. Daniel's omission had nearly cost them all, but his next move would decide their fate. As lightning split the sky, a new question hung in the air. Could they teach the earth to shed water in time, or would the thaw become a graver tomb than the blizzard ever was? All night, the townspeople fought the flood with shovels in desperation, but the muddy water kept rising, gnawing at the earthen walls like a hungry animal.
Daniel, the McIntyre house is beyond saving. People are saying you led them into a death trap.
I won't let them drown for my mistake. There's one place we can cut a deep diversion, but it'll run right under my own walls.
That could collapse the entire hillside. Reeves, your home would be the first to go.
So be it. The earth gave me shelter once. If it demands a sacrifice now, I'll give it my own roof before I let another family be buried.
The words hung in the wet air like a prayer, and for a moment, no one moved. Then Robert thrust his shovel into the mud.
You heard the man. Start digging here. Angle it, past the big stone. If we're going down, we go down together.
They cut a deep gully, water roaring through it like a river. Daniel's cabin groaned as the earth shifted beneath it, a deep seam opening in the west wall.
The wall is splitting. Daniel, pull back.
But the floodwaters obeyed the new channel, sweeping away from the other houses. Daniel's home gave a loud crack, then settled into stillness, wounded but standing. Dawn revealed the full damage to Daniel's cabin. The west wall had cracked deep, but the roof held, and the window still glowed with life.
It's not a grave yet. The east wall is sound, and the heart of the house still holds the warmth of last winter.
You'd stay in there? After the ground shifted? The next heavy rain could bring the whole hill down.
If I run now, the town will never trust the earth again. They'll call it a failure and return to timber and cold.
The townspeople gathered as word spread. They watched the cracked mound with the same doubt they had carried before the blizzard.
I missed the warning about drainage, and it nearly cost us everything. But I will not leave this house, nor let anyone tear it down. I'll shore up the west wall with timber and stone, and I'll show anyone who wants to learn how to carve proper drainage into a hillside.
He already gave his own roof to save the McIntyres. The least we can do is help him rebuild it.
I'll be the first to learn. My new house will have a drainage system before a single sod is laid.
Daniel turned and stepped back into his wounded home, the weight of his choice settling over the silent crowd like a debt not yet paid. The crowd dissolved into small knots of whispered doubt before drifting away. Only a handful of hands remained to help Daniel shore the cracked west wall with stone and timber.
These stones will brace the wall, but the real danger is the next rain. Without a working drain, the water will find that crack again.
Then we build the drain right here under the patch. If the water flows, it'll prove the method's sound. If it floods again, I'll be the only one to pay.
Daniel, let someone else take the risk for once. You've already nearly lost this house twice.
No one will ever trust this earth if I am not the first to stand inside when it's tested. I have to do this, Sarah.
By noon, the drain was dug and lined with flat stones, sloping away from the wounded wall. But the sky was already bruising with storm clouds. Thunder rolled across the valley, and the townspeople returned, not to help, but to watch, their faces hard with the memory of flooded walls. Daniel lifted the oil lamp and stepped into his cabin. The west wall groaned under the rising wind, and the first hard rain hammered the sod.
If the water finds the crack, this whole wall could give. But if the drain holds, every family in the valley will have a reason to trust the earth again.
Outside, the town watched the wounded mound in the beating rain, waiting to see if Daniel Reeves would drown in the grave he had refused to leave. Inside the sod cabin, the oil lamp flickered in the damp air, and Daniel pressed his ear to the west wall, listening for the telltale gurgle of water seeping through the crack.
The storm is loud, but under it, I can hear the new drain gurgling. It's pulling the water away. The crack is dry so far.
A sudden gust rattled the timbers, and a thin stream of muddy water spurted through a pinhole near the patched seam. Daniel dropped to his knees.
Not here. Not now.
Outside, a child cried out in the crowd, and Sarah's voice rose above the wind.
Daniel, are you hurt? Answer me.
I am here. The drain is holding, but a small breach. I am fixing it. Don't open the door.
For another hour, the storm hammered the hill, but the water flowed past the wounded wall, obeying the stone channel Daniel had carved.
It's working. The drain is carrying the flood. We're going to make it.
When the clouds finally broke, the first ray of sun lit the steaming mound, and the town saw Daniel Reeves step out, still alive, his hands black with mud. The crowd stood motionless, watching the mud-caked man who had twice now walked out of the earth alive.
The drain worked. The earth is still standing. You were right, Daniel. Completely right.
The earth will always prove us right if we learn its language. But I couldn't have done it alone. This drain was cut by dozens of hands.
And he'll teach anyone willing to listen. No one needs to freeze or flood again.
I'll send every apprentice I have to learn from you. My own house will follow your method.
The old hostility dissolved into something new. Not just forgiveness, but a shared hunger to understand the land.
They're not just listening, they're ready to dig. That's more than I ever hoped.
One by one, the townspeople stepped forward to inspect the drain, to touch the patched wall, to ask quiet questions. By sunset, Daniel stood beside his wounded but living home, and the crowd had become a council of learners. The page that Robert had discarded had now been read by an entire town, and the lesson was this: the earth is not a threat, but a teacher. Within the month, Robert's crew broke ground for a new earthen house on the south slope. The torn page was pinned to the wall of his workshop for all to see.
Every house from now on will have a drainage trench and a sod roof. The old way almost killed my family.
Daniel stood in his doorway each morning and found more hands than he could use. Men and women who once sneered now asked to learn.
You've given this valley a gift, Daniel. A way to live with the land instead of fighting it.
I only read what was already written. The rest was just faith in dirt.
Robert completed his earthen home before the autumn chill returned, and his apprentices built 3 more before the first snow.
I owe you more than an apology, Daniel. I owe you the truth that I buried, and thanks for digging it up.
The page is back where it belongs, and the earth has the last word.
By the next spring, Black Tree had 12 earthen homes, and Daniel's wounded cabin had healed into the most beautiful hill of them all. And the town that had once called it a grave now called it the heart of Black Tree. A year later, on the anniversary of the blizzard, the town gathered not to mourn, but to dedicate the new community hall, built into the hillside with a sod roof and a stone drain.
We learned that the earth is not an enemy. It is the foundation of everything we build, and every lesson we need.
Daniel, they want you to say something. After all, you are the reason we're all here.
1 year ago, they laughed at a grave. Now they stand in a hall made of earth and ask for wisdom. I only followed the instruction of a torn page and the land itself. The rest came from hands willing to work together.
He held up the framed page, the ink now faded, but the meaning clear. The earth shelters those who respect it. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, but the warmth inside the buried hall held steady, just as the old diagram predicted.
They're not afraid of winter anymore. The earth taught them that, and it will keep teaching.
Daniel stepped outside into the falling snow, looked at his original cabin, now a permanent hill, and let the quiet land speak the last word. They laughed when he buried his cabin under a hill of sod, but the worst winter came and the earth spoke for him. The snow fell through the night and stopped at dawn, leaving the valley wrapped in a stillness that felt like a held breath. Daniel stepped out of his buried cabin and stood in the crisp air, the same hillside that had once drawn laughter now drawing only peace. Inside the community hall, the framed page hung beside a window. A child asked what it meant.
That the earth only asks that we listen and build with its grain, not against it.
By noon, the thaw began, but the fields of Black Tree remained unchanged, a patchwork of living roofs that the storm could not undo. Daniel's wounded west wall had healed into a gentle curve, the crack now filled with new roots and frozen dew.
The page taught us how to build, Daniel. You taught us how to trust.
It was always the earth's trust, Robert. I just followed the instructions.
As the sun sank, the hills glowed like lanterns half buried in snow, each window a lesson still burning, and the earth that had been called a grave now held a town alive, patient and eternal as the soil itself. The valley settled into the rhythm of seasons, and the earthen homes looked more like hills each year, their sod roofs blooming with wild grass and forgetting they were ever walls.
The children ask why our houses look like hills. I tell them because they are. Hills that keep us warm in winter and cool in summer.
Daniel, the gray now streaking his beard, still walked the fields with a spade, but his work was no longer about survival, it was about sharing.
Every house I build now begins with a trench and ends with a garden on the roof. That's your legacy, my friend.
Not my legacy, the earth's. It just needed someone to listen.
The torn page remained framed in the hall, but the true diagram was written in the living hills themselves. a language of roots and warmth. One winter evening, a traveler climbed the sled track and saw the glowing mounds of black tree, each window a star on earth. He asked the first man he met how they survived the cold. Robert pointed at the nearest hill and said, "We don't fight the winter. We let the earth hold it." That night, in his own warm cabin, Daniel Reeves looked at the worn diagram and smiled. The earth had spoken, and an entire town had finally listened, and the red arrow on the chimney, a quiet mark on the living hill, pointed not just toward warmth, but toward a new way of living.